In the beginning. I'm sure most people have heard this phrase in one form or another. Whether in pop culture or through Christianity directly, it is commonly known as the first 3 words to open up the Bible. These 3 words are what kick off the creation of the world in 7 days, at least according to the book of Genesis. Funny enough though, the word Genesis is loosely used here, as it can also describe the events previous to the beginnings of something. Yet, most people use this term to describe the start, rather than the seeds that are planted sometime beforehand. And wouldn't you know, a series of video games intertwined with Christianity, and many other religions and mythologies, somewhat undergo the same missed observation. If you were to ask an average Shin Megami Tensei fan about the genesis of the series, they would most likely point you to 1992's Shin Megami Tensei. After all, it is the first title to bear the name of the series directly, and looks and feels the most in line with what we've come to know and love. Someone a bit more educated in the series' history would claim 1987's digital devil story Megami Tensei, as it was the first video game with the Megami Tensei moniker. On top of that, certain tropes and aesthetics would find their origin here as well, such as dungeon crawling mechanics and even the Minotaur who would later appear in Shin Megami Tensei 4. More hardcore fans though would even go a step further, and would claim the books written by Ai Nishitani that those games were based on were the true genesis of Shin Megami Tensei. And mind you, this is the correct answer if we were talking today about the start of SMT. But the genesis of SMT? Well, for that, I believe we have to go a bit further back to a very important manga and its creator. So the 1960s have come and gone, and the manga and anime scene at the time was primarily dominated by what I like to refer to as the Tezuka style. These entries were notable for their heavy influence from Disney cartoons and their more safe-for-children stories. Tezuka's Astro Boy and Yoshida's Speed Racer are good examples of what I'm talking about here, safe for all ages, but primarily targeted towards young kids. But the turn of the decade brings in an era of up-and-coming mangakas who are looking to tell more edgy stories. And one of the people leading the charge on this trend was Go Nagai. This man, ever since the beginning of his career, was met with controversies. One of his first works, 1968's Harenchi Gakuen, is credited with being the first ecchi series showing women's underwear and naked bodies. While this is considered very tame by today's manga and anime standards, showing naked boobs in manga at the time was unprecedented and met accordingly with backlash and bans.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet.
In the same breath, in 1971, he released a short manga named Demon Lord Dante, which was very graphic in its depictions of action and violence, something not too commonly depicted at the time. But this manga would fare better in a different way, as a little company called Toei Animation saw potential in it. However, Nagai had to rework it a bit for their standards, and in 1972, Devilman, both the anime and manga, was born. And yes, Devilman Crybaby fans, this is where the story originated from, not your 2018 reimagining, which is also very good in its own right. Devilman is about Akira Fudo, a so-called crybaby with no backbone. That is, until one day when his best friend Ryu Asuka picks him up illegally in his dad's car with a makeshift gun. Ryu's dad, being a famous archaeologist, kinda came across a nasty untold history of Earth and a forthcoming prophecy before his sudden death. Back in the day, the Earth was ruled by demons, creatures capable of fusing with others to possess seemingly limitless power. Hey, that sounds pretty familiar to the SMT Fusion system. Weird how that works. Anyways, the Age of Demons came to an end suddenly, the audience knowing this from the first chapter to be an act of God. However, some demons hid away in the Himalayas and slumbered under the ice, waiting for a day where they can take over. Well, it just so happens that the day has come, and it's up to Akira and Ryo to save mankind. How are they going to do this though? Lucky for them, Ryo's dad before his death left the key to their success back in his mansion. Before demons can stop the two, they find their key in the form of a Black Sabbath being performed in the basement. There's some pretty edgy imagery here, which was totally taboo at the time. Kinda reminds me of the edginess of Shin Megami Tensei 1's opening, with the man on the cross and the man getting eaten by a demon. But I digress. Akira is to fuse with a demon. Because of his human will and his pure soul, Ryo hypothesizes that Akira will be able to control the demon and become a hybrid of sorts. The power of a devil with the soul of a man, hence becoming Devilman. When the Sabbath reaches its climax, Ryo's experiment turns out to be correct, as Akira is possessed by a very important demon named Amon. Whoa, wait a sec. A boy named Akira fusing with a demon named Amon? Shin Megami Tensei, did you steal that? And with this, Akira becomes a different character entirely. He's more tough and rigid, but still with his heart in the right place. Now, I don't want to get into a full synopsis of Devilman. One, that would make this way too long and divert from the purpose of this video. And two, I really think you guys should experience this series for yourself if you haven't already, especially if you love SMT. With that out of the way, let's discuss some parallels between these two worlds. I already mentioned the fusion mechanic being something lifted into SMT from Devilman, but it goes a bit further in its influence. Yeah, we have seen demon on demon and demon on human fusion in SMT, but there is a particular character in the SMT series that bears a striking resemblance to Akira Fudo. That being the Demi-Fiend from SMT Nocturne. Without going into spoilers of either series, both Akira and the Demi-Fiend gain their demonic powers from outside forces by predetermined means. In a way, you could almost consider it fate, with both being thrusted into a horrific situation without any consent. Going even further, both struggle with their identity as a hybrid. Not being a human, but not being a demon either, this type of relationship sits upon the fractured world of Devilman and Nocturne. They both go in a slightly different direction though, with Devilman focusing on prejudice and Nocturne focusing on reasons. Interestingly enough, the greater SMT series lifted one of its most iconic thematic elements from Devilman directly. As I just mentioned, Devilman focuses on the horrors and prejudice of mankind, but does it in a way by framing it as a war between three factions, the humans, the demons, and heaven, with overlap between all of them. An angel sympathizing with demons, a man fusing with a demon, and God tormenting a soul for all eternity. No one is really in the right. The monsters seem almost human, and the divines seem almost hellish, and mankind, well, that is up for us to decide. And ever since the beginning of Megami Tensei, games weave their own narratives to try and build upon this idea. Mainly, we find this in the different routes of each game. Law, represented by the angels and God, harbors a sense of order in the world at the cost of freedom. Chaos, however, champions freedom and individuality at the cost of order, being the faction of Lucifer and the demons. And neutral is thrown into the mix as a catch-all, representing the will of mankind and seeing both sides to a degree. And with this, we find that no war is fought by a side of pure evil. Armies and ideologies are not created in a vacuum, it is the world that makes someone pick up a weapon and fight. Just like Akira, it is up to the player to find their place in this world.
You have fought through the opposing forces of chaos and order. Here at the end of all things, where do your loyalties lie? What path does your heart long for?
This is only the tip of the iceberg with parallels between SMT and Devilman. From things as small as Amon being the demon possessing Akira to large grandiose concepts of cycles, the demonic apple didn't fall too far from the satanic tree. I'm not saying SMT wouldn't exist without Devilman, but I'd be lying if I said it would be the same SMT we know and love today. Admittedly, I could have made this video about a lot of different things. Plenty of stories have taken inspiration from Devilman, Berserk, Chainsaw Man, Parasite, Neon Genesis Evangelion, the list goes on. But I chose Megami Tensei as an example because I feel it embodies its roots in such a proud demeanor. It accepts its influence and doesn't shy away from hiding it. From name drops to aesthetics to general themes, SMT will always be spiritually connected with Devilman. Granted, it is only one of many potential paths that Devilman's influence evolved into. But from these paths, from even their starts, we come from the same genesis. In the beginning, there was Devilman.